it's been a very rich experience here, politically, culturally, intellectually, and emotionally rich experience that I have had in the past few days in your presence. I'm very grateful to those who have believed in and worked so hard to maintain this platform for dialogue, intense exchange of ideas, and space for support, love, friendship, and a renewal of our faith in our work, in the process of change, and in the future of our movements for social justice. So thank you very much for allowing me to be here with you and to share some words with you. Today I will focus my reflections on thinking about linking movements transnationally. I use the word transnational deliberately. By this I mean consciously crossing across national boundaries and superseding nationalist orientations to find common vision, common ways of working as diffused, richly diverse but interlinked movements of people who are fiercely committed to the idea of social justice for all. We need little reminder of the ways we are interlinked. The obvious ways have become sharper in the era of economic globalization, where capitalist flight and more recently the phenomena of outsourcing has resulted in jobs lost in the United States, created twofold in countries in the South. However, the ways in which we are interlinked actually starts much before all of this, to our shared histories of colonialism, slavery, and indentured labor that saw human beings and natural resources being transported from the far reaches of the earth, from Africa, from Asia, and Latin America, to generate the immense wealth that currently still remains in the coffers of these nations of North America and Europe, this current economic crisis notwithstanding. In this conference, we have condoms made in Malaysia. I was delighted to see that. Garments made in Guatemala, Bangladesh, the Philippines, electronic equipment made or assembled in China and Taiwan. We have food that originates in different parts of the world. Through globalized media, we hear news about natural disasters and war in other parts of the world almost as soon as it happens. Furthermore, as a nation with an immense amount of political clout throughout the current economic and political regimes, the United States and its allies calls the shots. In spaces such as the World Bank, the IMF, and the more recently formed World Trade Organization, global institutions which have been described as suffering from deep democratic deficits. These institutions have driven policies and programs over more than 2 decades that have resulted in the impoverishment, starvation, and underdevelopment of millions of people all over the global south. So even as we are here talking about strengthening our ranks nationally and building a broad front of movements for social justice, I want to assert the value for all of us to extend our political agenda to a transnational one. Towards this, I would like to touch on 3 points that are interlinked. Firstly, we have heard often of the saying, think locally, act globally. That's, came out sometime in the 80s, I think. However, today I believe we need to think and act locally and transnationally. I believe we all have to work locally to secure and protect human rights and ensure social justice. But yet we have to be vigilant about the ways in which the policies created by the US government in particular have a dire impact on social justice in other parts of the world. The global gag rule, which is now repealed, but which existed for many years, which banned the funding of abortion services through USAID funds, for example, resulted in organizations fully dependent on US development aid to cut back their programs in ways that severely compromised on women's reproductive justice in countries in the South. I was encouraged in this conference to hear many people, amongst them the climate justice activists, speaking about the disproportional ways in which people of color, both in the United States and in the global South, suffer from the impact of climate change and environmental degradation. We need our vision to extend as far as this. The United States is currently still the sole superpower nation in the world. I am delighted in our conversations that we had in one of the meetings prior to the conference here with the Third Way Foundation. We were talking about the spirit of collectivism, keeping that alive in our non-profit organizations. But the truth of it is, we are living in the era of the father of all hierarchies. And in this current era, the United States is at the top. So we can no longer consider our struggles here in the United States without also considering the struggles of social justice activists around the world. Secondly, we need to have much more conversations about the ways our struggles are different and similar, and much more strategizing for collective action. Reproductive justice may mean different things in countries of the South than here in the United States. There are struggles against persistent imperialism guised as economic globalization, neoliberal economic globalization. There are persistent conditions of underdevelopment and poverty, and the lack of the most basic services that impede access to reproductive justice. Even so, we have a lot to learn from each other. I so admired the clarity, the frankness, and the depth of analysis around some of the issues about sexual autonomy, bodily integrity, and power struggles across identities. Certainly, body politics is a conversation that many more feminists in the South engage in now more than before. Likewise, activists here could benefit from hearing more about the impact of unfair trade agreements and intellectual property regimes on women's lives in the South, and the struggles that activists wage in the South against the privatization of public health services. Finally, I strongly believe in the possibility of people fighting for social justice to find ways to align themselves with each other's struggle more closely now than before. The same information and communication technologies that are supporting neoliberal economic globalization have also made it possible for activists to share information, exchange our ideas, explore our dreams, strategize on collective action through blogs, interactive web spaces, e-lists, and so forth. But the more traditional ways of meeting face-to-face in dialogue needs to continue for those of us who do not have access or choose not to access these technologies. We need to start at the smallest units of self-described communities. We need to start at the smallest units of self-described communities, extending out into the diffuse but vital communities and movements that work and live alternative lives across boundaries. Finally, I truly believe that it's time for us to give up our clinging to our national identities and to show up the current reincarnation of nationalism for the jingoistic ideology that it is. Too many people have killed and died in the name of their nations in the past 2 decades, and it's really time for us to drop our allegiance to the nation state. Benedict Anderson describes a nation as an imagined political community. It is time for us to have a different imagined community, one that extends out into all those people who long for social justice.